I'm David Blyn. I'm 50 years of age.
My name is McKinney, and we are here at Riverbank Farm in Roxbury, Connecticut.
It's approximately 55 acres and approximately 15 acres of mixed vegetables, cut flowers. And on the side we have a few milk goats, some maple syrup, hay. I've been here since 1989. At the time I was a carpenter and not a vegetable farmer. With the economy deteriorating at the time, I decided to try my hand at vegetable farming.
I am 40 years old and have been here since 1997. Met Dave and came here and saw Dave kind of like jumping on all this equipment and running around. And there was just a lot going on here. I think Dave was at his initial construction phase of the farm. And so I felt like I needed to learn more, or we needed to turn this more into a business so we're really making money. So I actually went back to California, to Santa Cruz, and did a 6-month apprenticeship program. And there I was able to learn a lot about salad mix and cut flowers and just all the things that were missing. And so then I came back here. Every year it was constantly like, how can we make this easier on our bodies? Because I realized, I was like this kind of feminist woman coming from Santa Cruz, like, I will do it, I will carry it or whatever. But you realize you only have one body and you have to preserve your body, for the long term if you're going to be a farmer. And I saw so many burly farmers in California that were doing everything by hand, and their backs fell apart and they were done farming after like 5 years. So I realized it was so important that we needed to create systems here that we were just using our body for things that we had to, and that we could use the machines to make the farm operation a lot simpler.
I realized early on that I would have to be efficient. I've always been an advocate of scaling up. I don't know if that's a politically correct word describing mechanization. From very beginning, farmers have been trying to find more efficient ways of doing things. You can find a machine to do something faster. It saves your body. 2, it gives you more time to do something else that might not lend itself to mechanization. Also, I like to think that when you make decisions, sometimes you have to look at what your competitors are using. So if your competitors are using transplanters and potato diggers and forklifts and box trucks, then certain crops lend themselves to mechanization, like potatoes. We pretty much cut them with a machine, plant them with a machine. It's all tractor cultivated. There's no hand weeding, hand hoeing. We do hand pick some potato larvae, and then it's machine dug. And potatoes are definitely one of the more productive vegetables on the farm. So the point is, if we didn't have that mechanized, I don't think we should grow potatoes. And I've told apprentices that if you're starting a farm, there are some crops that maybe you shouldn't grow because your competitors have them mechanized.
I would say for me, the biggest thing for us scaling up was that we bought a transplanter. Because I had started now so many things in the greenhouse that Dave hadn't done before. And then it was suddenly like we're planting all these 3 rows by hand. So we bought the transplanter, but then we didn't have a tractor that went slow enough for the transplanter. So then we had to buy another tractor that had a creeper gear. So you're constantly kind of adding things that make things easier. In order to make enough so that we could have more workers, ideally your workers should always pay for themselves, and it's a good thing. We had to increase our size and our equipment and everything. And that just made so that our lives were a little bit simpler. So we have a crew that could be working so that we can be done at a certain time of day. And so your farm has to be a certain size to be able to have labor. But labor will pay for itself, and I think you have to not be afraid to hire people, because that's the only way you're going to develop systems and get bigger and learn how to produce more food. The more you have your systems in place, so if you're going to, because we have turnover, I have lots of like a book, lots of printed out material as far as how things run here. Like in the greenhouse, there's sheets about how things are sown, what trays they're sown into. The more systems that you have in place, some kind of structure to your farm, the easier it is to make those transitions to new people. And I think it's really nice too that most people, they enjoy working here, so they often stay a 2nd or 3rd year, and it gives them the opportunity then to train the new people and kind of step up on their way to leaving.
when you're thinking about scaling up, you have to look at the whole system so that if you expand one part of the system, you don't create bottlenecks at another part of the system. So the example would be potatoes. So if you decide to machine plant potatoes, yeah, that'll speed up the process. You can easily plant an acre of potatoes consistently and accurately. But later in the year, you're probably going to want to have a digger, and then with all these potatoes, now you need a place to store them, potato storage. So you have to look at the whole system to plan, so you're not just expanding one part of the equation and not the whole thing.
Well, we keep adding greenhouses. You put them up and they seem to pay for themselves very quickly, the return on any greenhouse. And they're going to pay for themselves because people want tomatoes. We're a market farm, so we're trying to produce stuff that we know people will buy at the farmer's market, right? We don't want to mess up on the things that we know draw people to our market, which are probably, the tomatoes, and we love growing root crops. But you kind of have to figure out what your farm's going to specialize in and what you're going to grow, and then how you can make growing that easier. You've got to identify, what's making money for you on your farm, and maybe you love growing something. You should always grow what you love to grow, but you really want to, we've constantly kind of every year hone in on what we should just stop growing. That's part of, I think, scaling up too, is just always assessing, what you're planting.